I'm fully listen. I'm fully empathetic with how you're feeling. I was on Garland Nixon's podcast yesterday. I put on a neck brace. You know the things that people when they have whiplash from a car accident. I put one of those on because it was symbolic of what we're going through. One moment, Trump says he's going to quote bomb the shit out of Iran, and then the next moment he's like, "Hey, all we're saying is give peace a chance." You know, he goes from being Dr. Strangelove to becoming John Lennon, and um, this process has been shepherded by Pakistan. They've been at the center of it, and the information that Pepe and Ike were given, it's turning to track to um, prove to be true. Um, the Pakistanis the other day were talking about walking away, but they didn't. Qatar got involved. So it looks like what they have produced is based on those 14-point document that Iran introduced back on April 8th, that they've come up with a memorandum of understanding, so how they're going to work this. It doesn't mean that they've actually got agreements on each of the issues, but apparently one of the key sort of acts of good faith has been carried out by the United Arab Emirates, who turned over reportedly $3 billion the other day. You know, when I heard first of that report, I was skeptical, but there's another report out now saying they're going to turn over like a total of $20 billion, and this $3 billion was the first of that tranche. So Iran is they're seeing some money, because one of their red line demands was you've got to have the unfreeze the assets. The the other sort of their other four more fundamental demands that they absolutely insist on: the lifting of the sanctions, the recognition of Iran's control or sovereignty over the Strait of Hormuz, lift the blockade by the United States, and a permanent ceasefire in Lebanon. Get the Israeli troops out and actually withdraw the Israeli forces from Gaza as well. So there's no sign that Iran's backed off of that. It's just now a question of at what point in the process does that come to the forefront.
Yeah, well, I saw from the Iranian side that is Aragchi, he came out as well and was making the point that the memorandum of understanding will put this out in different steps. That is, first step, we'll do this. Once it has been achieved, we'll move to the next step. But so the first step apparently would be, they signed this memorandum of understanding, and once it's signed, all of Iran's assets will be released, and they will not be frozen again. This is kind of the deal, and once this is done, they can move on to the next step. So this is quite significant. It's releasing the sanctions. It's not the most difficult thing to do compared to the other tasks, but it is a show of goodwill, though, because it's been so many nonsense negotiations, and also once you get this out of the way, it's gonna essentially be a cost for the U.S. as well to go back on what is promised. So it's a good first move, but what are the other things that have to be included into this deal, though?
Well, again, lifting all the sanctions, not just oil. So part of what one of the initial gestures will be lifting sanctions on oil. That benefits Trump as well. Helps get some more oil out of in the market, but ultimately get all of the sanctions lifted, lift the U.S. blockade, and then I think the real stumbling block is going to be Israel. Israel's going to have to leave Lebanon and leave Gaza. Now, if left up to them, they are not going to do it. But Trump has the leverage in terms of saying, okay, we're going to cut off all aid to you, and you're going to be on your own. That will motivate Israel to come around. But I candidly don't think Trump's willing to play that hard with them. I think Trump is, will lose his fine. But hey, I'm prepared to be surprised and very much mistaken on that. So um, the other issues with respect to the nuclear side, that's for down the road. Now, Israel's complaining that this doesn't begin to address the ballistic missiles. And candidly, I don't think Iran's going to allow ballistic missiles to even be put on the agenda, because apart from controlling the Strait of Hormuz, that's their other ace in the hole, or their other trump card, so to speak.
Yeah, I was gonna say, well, on the Strait of Hormuz, I saw Arakci make the point that, while Iran may not well, he said levying tolls would not be acceptable, but he said we're reserved the right to charge for services, given that it's not international waters. It's all the Strait of Hormuz falls within either Iran or Oman's national waters.
Correct.
On the nuclear deal, though, I mean, once Trump begins to make the point that we'll get a deal so Iran can't have a nuclear weapon, this introduces some optimism for me, because if he starts to frame the conflict as preventing Iran from getting a nuclear weapon, then a deal can be made, because Iran's made it clear it doesn't need a nuclear weapon. So at least in that area there's some flexibility. So if Trump wants to claim victory, this is essentially what he wants to
Right.
gamble on, because if he sets the goal of opening, having the Strait of Hormuz act as treated as if it's international waters, then he can't have a victory. My concern, though, is what you hinted towards there, though, which is the ceasefire in Lebanon and Gaza. That is, that has to be included into the ceasefire. Well, I'm assuming that Israel will do anything, well, everything in its power to disrupt this this peace negotiation. So, if
Clint, are you a cynic?
slightly so, yeah, but this isn't the courtyard. Well, this isn't the for the Israelis, though. I mean,
Yeah.
Lebanon, Gaza, by having this in the deal, they can essentially veto it anytime they want by massacring people there.
Or don't forget false flags. So Israel would carry out something to make it look like Iran violated the agreement, that Iran attacked one of its neighbors. Uh, it's been fascinating this week watching Iranian restraint. Yet, I don't know if you've picked this up, but I think it was on the Tuesday or Wednesday strikes by the United States that we saw the first evidence of Iran's upgraded air defense system. Because it reported they took down 5 Tomahawk missiles during the strike on Bandar Abbas. They hadn't done that before, and they also engaged an I think it was an F-16, again with the ground. The air defense system lit it up. F-16 knew it was going to be engaged, and it bailed out real quick. So that's clear assistance from China and Russia that have upgraded them on that. Then the targeting, their retaliatory strikes, they were not massive, but they were incredibly precise. And I know, and I have some information with respect to one of those, that it was extremely damaging to U.S. I'll call it U.S. strategic capabilities. In other words, the U.S. ability to, if they were launching intercontinental ballistic missiles, that my understanding is whatever was taken out in Bahrain was a critical, uber expensive component. And the feeling I know on the U.S. side was the only way that could have been targeted was with Chinese and Russian assistance. Similarly, on this very last strike, they hit another radar that was in Bahrain and took it out. So then they were hitting precise targets at the Mawafaq al-Salti Air Base in Jordan, and reportedly damaged F-35s, F-15s, and F-16s, as well as maybe an E-8 Prowler. So, Iran's got to be feeling a little more confident from a military standpoint that they were not just getting beat up with no response. And what I'm seeing right now, we're not seeing any of the signature activities you would expect to see from the United States militarily if they were planning additional airstrikes. So, right now we're at, let's see, going to be 5 o'clock here. So that's, so it's about 1 o'clock in the morning, 1:30 in the morning over in Iran. And uh, usually this is the time when U.S. Military strikes are lighting off, and we're not seeing anything. So that says that in fact, these talks, they are real, and the negotiations are genuine. They're not just a facade. Whether they can hold up, that's a whole other issue.
Yeah, well, I know skeptics, and I would put myself in that category, would
Me too. Me too.
well, my skepticism is on the idea that Trump wants an end to the war. I mean, I think the deception is in the past is because they want to defeat the Iranians. They don't want to have a peace agreement and live side by side. But they must be sinking in that they can't achieve their objectives. They can't defeat the Iranians, and the longer they have this thing dragging on, the more pain Iran's going to bring to them. So yeah, why wait until the bitter end? It looks as if, well, again, it could be that this is this realization that they have to throw in the towel. But what do you make of the strikes they had though? Because when the Iranians had the retaliatory strikes, they appeared to focus on Bahrain, on Jordan, and Kuwait.
Yeah.
I kind of had assumed that any retaliatory strike would prioritize the United Arab Emirates for destruction. But you think this is linked up to the deal, given that
Oh yeah.
they just handed over a few billions? I mean, is this one of the steps the Iranians showing that they will cease all hostilities if they, show some reciprocity?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, UAE is like, they're like the most obnoxious relative at the table. You want to punch them in the face. They have been consistently siding with Israel until recently, and they were quick to come out and condemn Iran for retaliating for having been attacked. However, Monday, that delegation from the UAE went to Tehran, and I think for the UAE, it's an economic calculation. They've really taken a beating in the course of this war. Now 105 days old, 106 days old. They've suffered significant economic damage and are looking to get back into business. They've got that free trade zone, Jebel Ali, that has just been shut down, dead for the entire duration of this war. So reportedly, they're playing a critical role in returning some of the frozen assets. The day after, so they went Monday. The next day, Tuesday, the Qatari delegation shows up, and they stay. And many thought that they would leave, Tuesday afternoon. And as soon as they left, then the United States would start up the attack again. But apparently, they stuck around. They stayed overnight, so they were there during one of the attacks. Even it didn't really hit Tehran, but it was close. And so Qatar apparently played a role with the Pakistanis and get it working out a document that they could all agree to. The other thing that's going on behind the scenes that Pepe and I, Escobar and I have been told, and I believe it's true, is that Pakistan is also negotiating with Qatar and Saudi Arabia and helping them plan their escape from being under the control of the United States, or separating themselves from being a host for U.S. military personnel. And that is an interesting, in the 14-point document that Iran presented to the United States, one of the points was that the United States withdraw its military personnel from around Iran. Whether they'll get that or not remains to be seen, but we have seen reluctance, let's call it no enthusiasm on the part of the Saudis or Qataris to allow their bases to be used by the United States, but specifically they're not allowing Israel to overfly their territory at all. So that that's put some, I guess, brakes on what the Israelis could do in terms of engaging militarily. So this is a pretty complex diplomatic effort, and Pakistan's not doing this on its own. Pakistan is doing it with the full support, encouragement. China is the principal, but Russia is a secondary. So this actually comes down to broader constructing a BRICS order, a new international economic order that's going to be free of Western pressure and sanctions. Like Scott Bessie can threaten, oh, we're gonna seize your dollars, and all Iran's gonna say is, well, we're selling our oil in yuan, so screw your dollars.
I was going to say, well, what will the region look like after this war? Again, we're delving into speculation. We don't know what exactly is in this memorandum of understanding. We don't know the different steps, if they will be followed. But we do know that what is important for the Iranians. I mean, if they are willing to not cede the Strait of Hormuz, but if they're willing to show some flexibility, then for me it indicates that at least then perhaps the Gulf states have made some commitments to perhaps limit the presence of U.S. troops, because the whole purpose for the Iranians is to holding on to Strait of Hormuz is an instrument to decouple the U.S. a bit from the region. So this objective will stand, but I mean,
well, let me ask you, what areas do you think they might be flexible on?
The toll, how much you would charge on ships going through. I think all of this, I think it's a means to an end, and the end would be to have a tool to encourage the countries of the region to remove sanctions and to expel U.S. bases as a favorable terms for access. If they go along with this,
Hello. Oh, you're back.
yeah,
I see you moving. Okay, you froze up there momentarily.
yeah,
I don't know if it was you or me.
could be at my end. Yeah. Yeah,
So
no,
anyway, you were saying.
no, yes, I was saying, well, I was saying, I assume that if they're willing to be less strict on what they charge going through the Strait of Hormuz, how they're gonna run it, essentially, it's because they're getting other guarantees that the U.S. will reduce their presence. I'm just thinking, how do you see the region forming though after this war? Because a lot of things have changed. Iran extended its security guarantees to, or it's extended deterrence to Lebanon. We see, the U.S. will be out of its mind to try to attack Iran again. This has been a very painful experience. But how much do you think Iran's position in the region will change as a result of this?
Well, actually, I think Iran would be a bit of a moderating influence. I mean, let's be candid about the Gulf Arabs. They're like a bunch of nasty high school girls. There's that movie, The Mean Girls. So, okay, 7 years ago, you got Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates. They're mad at Qatar. Oh, and they try to impose an embargo. Why? Because Qatar was having relations with Turkey and was supporting Hamas. Okay, then let's jump 2 years ago. Now all of a sudden, it's the Saudis mad at the Emiratis and threatening to go to the war. And then you got, so it's just, they've had these so-called Gulf Arabs are not united at all. I mean, they've been getting pissed off at each other over just some of the most ridiculous things. And the irony was, when the Saudis and Emiratis were going after Qatar, who was the one country that came to the aid of Qatar? Iran. So Iran has been careful on its diplomatic efforts, and I think with strong encouragement from both Russia and China. So it was now 2 years ago, maybe three, that Saudi Arabia and Tehran basically they repaired, because I mean they had been at odds. They'd been fighting a proxy war in Yemen with Iran backing the Houthis and Saudis backing the government, the regular government. But anyway, they bridged that gap. So they settled that difference. And what what Pakistan is also doing with, again, with the encouragement of China. We can't ignore China is the hidden, I don't want to call them the puppet master here, but they're talking to Egypt, Turkey, the Saudis, Iran, and with Pakistan forming a new military, if you will, a NATO style organization for that region. And this becomes, it's gotten especially interesting this week with Israel's verbal attacks and threats on Turkey and getting in, just getting in a proverbial old pissing match with Erdogan. And, the only one who's got as big an ego as Donald Trump is Erdogan. And so, he didn't take kindly to that. And I'm sitting there trying to figure out what are these Israelis thinking? Here, this guy controls a major source of their oil. He could cut it off in a heartbeat, and instead they're threatening them that we're going to attack you and destroy you. Color me surprised. So that's where I think that this proposal from China through Pakistan that these countries come together to form a defensive alliance against Israel is something that's starting to resonate. So I think we could see that, and that's going to and Israel's position will be, at least from the standpoint of public support in the United States, will be much more vulnerable. They're not going to have the reflexive support, and even if they succeed in getting themselves completely insinuated into the National Defense Authorization Act, the Section 224 and Section 622, they're trying to basically, like a tick or a parasite, embed themselves in the host so that they'll never be subject to any kind of political controversy coming down the line. So I see the military effort increase among those countries, as well as levels of economic cooperation. I mean, frankly, Qatar's got some years of rebuilding to do ahead of itself because of the damage it suffered early on in this war. I'm not sure how much physical damage Saudis have took or encompassed. Bahrain will probably become part of Iran again, and Kuwait, we could see it get folded back into Iraq. So there'll be some changes, I think.
Yeah, I've been looking at Kuwait as well. Its continued independence is highly questionable. Well, one of the reasons we don't know too much about this memorandum of understanding and the possible deal that will follow is there's been encouragement, to keep the media quiet. And I was wondering, how do you read this? Is this for people not to oversell the story or have in order to essentially create the wrong expectations to sabotage it? I mean, it looks like the concern for sabotage is on all sides, to be honest, because one often looks at the American side. It's many who do not want this deal. The Israelis are obviously also eager to sabotage, but also within Iran, you have the hawks. There are many hawks who also say, well, for good reason, they are in a strong position now. This is the time to, well, put an end to their enemies, not
Right.
to accept a deal. And of course, you can understand why they would be hesitant to make any deals after everything that's happened. But anyways, my point is, at all sides, you find some saboteurs. Is this why there's so much secrecy in the media?
Yeah, no, I think the particularly on the Trump side of the house, they are trying to prevent a further firestorm. There was all the social media influencers that are paid for by the Israeli government. They went on starting Sunday, boy, they went on a blistering attack on Trump, and he was getting phone calls from people like Lindsey Graham and Sheldon Adelson's widow. Um, and he succumbs to that pressure. But I think right now he's also another element. I meant to mention this earlier is the oil company executives reportedly went in to brief Trump, and they said, "Oh my God, uh, this is going to be terrible." Um, the headline was. They're desperately trying to warn the White House about major fuel disruption that is imminent. And this official, again, refused to be named out of fear of retaliation. But this is the potential for real economic chaos in the United States is scaring Trump as well. And so he's caught between, okay, if he gets this war, gets at least some sort of peace in place with Iran, and can take credit for saying, hey, Iran's promised they're not going to have a nuke, which that's been Iran's position all along, then he can take a victory lap with that without, people pointing out you got something that's weaker than JCPOA, but